Hello, Jacksonites, and welcome to a brand new review of, I believe, my very first 2020 film. Let's see real quick. I think so. Oh, no, Tremor Shrieker Island counts as a 2020 film. Well, first one since Tremor Shrieker Island to come out in 2020 that I've reviewed. But yes, indeed. Um, Man, 2020, what a whack ass year, wasn't it? And a lot of people were thinking that 2020 was like a dark, depressing, terrible year for films. Well, I think they're kind of partially right, but in the years since, I think that we've discovered some gems that have come out in 2020, like today's film. Today, my first Universal movie since The Mummy 3, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, I put out a poll because I discovered that I can do community posts on my channel. So I put out a poll uh, of what I should do for the next video because I have a shit ton of ideas jumbling around in my head and I just don't really know which one to start with. So I left it to viewers. I left a poll of four options. The other three options were a review of the first Paranormal Activity, a review of the first Rambo film, and a Christmas slash TV film update haul video. And ultimately, of course, today's subject won out. Today, I will be reviewing 2020's The Invisible Man, directed by Leigh Whannel. Yes, indeed. Why this movie? Why not? Partially because I've received quite a bit of criticism from a couple of my contemporaries saying that I do nothing but re-review movies, even though I don't think that's entirely true. But whatever. I'm trying to throw other audience members a bone and I'm trying to expand and do new stuff. And I thought, well, on a whim, I just rewatched this movie and I thought, this might make for a good video. So what the hell? Why not give it a try? Anthony Sarkis here saying this was the last film I saw in theaters before we went on lockdown. For me, that was Birds of Prey. Harley Quinn Birds of Prey. That was my last movie I saw in theaters before I went on lockdown. And I've only seen one movie in theaters since, A Quiet Place Part 2. But yes, indeed, The Invisible Man 2020. So jumping right into the personal history, well, before we begin, a word from our sponsor. Oh, that's good. So, The Invisible Man 2020 was a very pleasant surprise. Um, After the whole Tom Cruise 2017 Mummy film debacle, I was convinced that we're not going to see a Universal monster movie for at least a decade after that. And I was surprised when whisperings of a new Invisible Man movie started coming around. And when it was announced, hey, a new Invisible Man movie directed by Leigh Whannel is coming out in either late 2019 or early 2020. So I was like, oh, wow, really? Why the Invisible Man? Why such a random monster to follow up the Mummy with? And I was one of those people that thought that this might have been connected to the Tom Cruise film and being part of Universal's dark universe. It's not, of course, but and when I learned that it wasn't, I was thinking, that might be for the better, honestly. So I followed the production around a little bit, and when the film came out, so The Invisible Man was released February 28th, 2020, Yeah, I remember that actually. It wasn't long before the rampant lockdowns happened because it came out around the same time that Birds of Prey came out too. And I was a little interested in checking it out, but um, I was going through a whole clusterfuck of bullshit at the time. Plus, I was more interested in Birds of Prey, so I was just like, I'll check it out at a later date. So I did. I first watched The Invisible Man 2020 when actually me and Meadow first moved into this place. I bought it from Redbox. You can see in the middle of my disc, there's the Redbox disc sticker in the middle. I've actually bought a lot of movies from Redbox. Um, it's a nice cheap way to get movies that like if you like them, cool. If you don't, you only waste like $6 at the most. So oh well. So yeah, um, and Meadow had expressed a little bit of interest in this too, because not too long before this, we had watched Jordan Peele's Us, which the main actress from this movie is also in. And when I told her, yeah, you remember that chick from Us? She's in this, and she's the main character. So we were just like, oh, okay, cool. This might be interesting. So I bought it off of Redbox. Ah, Cinematic Trash is here. Yeah, bought it off a Redbox, and I brought it home, and she and I sat down and watched the movie, kind of in 2 times. Like, the first time we sat down to watch it, we got maybe 20 minutes into it. Then we shut it off because we had a friend of hers that was visiting. But the second time, we sat down, restarted the movie, and watched it from beginning to end. And by the time it was over, I was, we were both fairly impressed. Oh, I should also give a quick disclaimer too. I actually caught a cold. That's why I was blowing the shit out of my nose my last review. If you can't tell, my voice is still a bit scratchy and not normal, so I don't know if that makes any difference. So apologies for last video. It wasn't my allergies. Uh, I just caught a cold and I didn't even realize it. But I am better now. So there'll be no blowing my nose every 10 minutes, which I'm sure was annoying. But anyway, so yeah, me and Meadow were fairly impressed with The Invisible Man. We thought it was a pretty good time. Since then, we've watched it 3 times since. The second time with Meadow's mom, actually, and she really liked it. And the subsequent 2 times since, I just plop it on randomly just because I feel like it. And every time I watch it, I think it gets a little better. This is a damn solid, very well made, well constructed, well done movie, in my opinion. Um, Nothing like absolutely monumentally spectacular or anything, but for what this movie is and for what it does, you out here? Okay. Bye, honey. I love you. Yeah, for what this movie is, it is pretty damn awesome. So I mentioned the name Leigh Whannell. Leigh Whannell is the director of this movie. He's more well known. He is best known for writing films directed by his friend James Wan. Specifically, he was the co-star and writer of the original Saw film. And he also co-wrote the film Dead Silence and Insidious and Insidious Chapter 2. Whannell has since made his directorial debut with Insidious Chapter 3 and has directed 2 more films since then. Upgrade from 2018, which that was what I thought Leigh Whannell's directorial debut was. I'm just now learning that Insidious 3 was his directorial debut. Why are you flickering? Okay, cool. And of course, this film. Whannell also co-wrote Saw 2 and 3 and he was a producer or executive producer for all of the Saw films. He was also the writer of the first Saw video game, and he was the co-writer of Cooties, the kid zombie movie that I reviewed back in 2017. So Leigh Whannell has certainly had a distinctive career, which is nice. And I haven't seen Upgrade. I have seen Saw. I haven't seen really any of the Insidious movies. I never made it past like 35 minutes into the first film. So obviously, I could definitely say of Leigh Whannell's work, this is his best work, without a shadow of a doubt. So The Invisible Man is a 2020 science fiction horror film written and directed by Leigh Whannell, inspired by H.G. Wells's novel of the same name, which I have read, and I have seen the original Invisible Man from 1933. I think it's a good film, but I just think it's an average Universal movie, although its special effects are very, very impressive, especially for the time. It's the film stars Elizabeth Moss as a woman who believes she is being stalked and gaslit by her seemingly deceased ex-boyfriend after he acquires the ability to become invisible. Aldous Hodge, Storm Reed, Harriet Dyer, and Michael Dorman appear in supporting roles. And development on a contemporary Invisible Man movie began in 2006, but it was halted in 2011. An attempt at reviving the project in 2016 as part of Universal's Dark Cinematic Universe was also canceled following the critical and financial failure of Tom Cruise's The Mummy. After Universal moved away from a serialized universe to more standalone films, this project re entered development in 2019. The Invisible Man was released on February 28th, 2020. It received very positive reviews and praise for Moss's performance and themes on domestic abuse. It was also a success, grossing $145 million against a $7 million budget. Jesus. But due to its theatrical release being cut short by the COVID-19 pandemic, the film was made available for digital rental 3 weeks after it premiered in the United States and made a killing there too. I think The Invisible Man is, uh, like overall, one of the most profitable movies of all 2020. Um, so yeah, that's all that. Um, with all that being said, let's get into the plot of The Invisible Man. Cecilia Cass, played by Elizabeth Moss. The only other thing aside from Us, Jordan Peele's Us, that I know Elizabeth Moss from, she is also well known for the show The Handmaid's Tale, which I wouldn't mind checking out. Cecilia Cass is trapped in a violent and controlling relationship with wealthy optics engineer and businessman Adrian Griffin. Griffin, of course, being a callback to the original Invisible Man novel, where the main character is named Jack Griffin. One night, Cecilia drugs Adrian with her diazepam and escapes his highly secured house with the assistance of her younger sister Emily. Oh, okay. I thought Cecilia was older or younger, excuse me. Cecilia hides out in the home of her childhood friend, Detective James Lanier, and his teenage daughter Sydney. 2 weeks after Cecilia's escape, Adrian seemingly commits suicide and leaves her $5 million. Wish I had that money. His brother Tom, who is also his lawyer, handles the arrangements of his will. Cecilia suspects another presence in the house after several strange events, but James assures her she is just traumatized and paranoid. During a job interview, she finds her work portfolio's contents removed and she then faints. The doctor says high levels of diazepam were found in her system, and in her bathroom, she finds the same bottle of bloody diazepam which she drugged Adrian with during her escape. Cecilia, accompanied by James, meets with Tom. She believes that Adrian faked his death and used his optics expertise to become invisible in order to torment her, but this idea is rebuffed. Later, Sydney is hit by an unseen force while comforting Cecilia and assuming that Cecilia did it, which I think is a slightly forced, and is becoming unbalanced. She and James leave the house. Alone, Cecilia tries various tactics to catch the figure she believes hit Sydney. She finds Adrian's phone in the attic, on which she immediately receives a text saying, "Surprise." Cecilia dumps paint down the attic trap door and it coats a previously invisible figure. Probably the scariest scene in the movie. A violent struggle ensues, but she escapes. She goes to Adrian's home to investigate his lab, where she finds an additional invisible bodysuit, confirming her suspicions. Right after she hides the suit in her former bedroom's closet, the invisible figure attacks again, so she flees and contacts Emily. The pair meet at a restaurant where the invisible figure slits Emily's throat, and I quote Steve Harvey, "Thank you, Jesus!" I think that's his name. And places the knife in Cecilia's hand, framing her for murder. While awaiting trial, Cecilia is remanded to a psychiatric hospital where she learns that she is pregnant. Tom offers to get her charges dropped if she agrees to return to him and raise the child, implying that Tom helped stage his brother's suicide. He reveals Adrian tampered with her birth control to impregnate her. Cecilia refuses the offer and steals a fountain pen from him. That night, she attempts suicide and lures out the invisible figure. When the figure tries to stop her, she stabs him repeatedly with the pen, causing the suit to glitch and malfunction. The security team arrives, but the figure incapacitates them before fleeing the hospital with Cecilia in pursuit. To protect her unborn child, the figure instead threatens to attack those she loves. Cecilia races to James' house and finds the figure attacking him and Sydney. She shoots the figure to death but finds Tom in the suit. Police storm Adrian's house and find him alive, tied up and claiming that Tom held him prisoner. They conclude that Tom killed Emily as well, but Cecilia believes that Adrian set his brother up as the scapegoat for his crimes. To get Adrian's confession, a now exonerated Cecilia meets him at the house, secretly wearing a wire while James listens in from a few blocks away. Excuse me. She agrees to mend their relationship, but only if he confesses to killing Emily. Adrian insists that Tom was responsible, but claims that the experience changed his outlook on life and how he treated her. After Adrian says the word surprise, Cecilia excuses herself. Moments later, the security camera captures Adrian seemingly slitting his own throat. Cecilia returns and calls 911, and apparently distraught. Out of the camera's sight, however, she stares coldly at a dying Adrian and taunts him, indicating that she had used the spare bodysuit to kill him. When James arrives, Cecilia confirms what the camera captured. He notices she is carrying the suit, but allows her to leave, kind of abruptly ending the film, but ending it on a fairly triumphant note. Alrighty. So, what do I think of this plot? Have I seen the Invisible Man sequels from the '40s? No. I'd like to. In particular, the Invisible Man Returns, because Vincent Price. How can you go wrong with Vincent Price? What do I think of this plot? It's pretty damn well done. It's very meticulous. It's very well thought. It's a pretty small scale film, but that's okay because this movie's not trying to do anything severe. And I think this kind of was an experiment piece for Leigh Whannel to, well, I mean, he kind of did do that with his previous movie, Upgrade, but even more so with this. I feel like this was an experiment to show that you don't need a $200 million budget to make a good movie, because this movie costs only $7 million, and this is a fantastic film in my opinion. But yeah, it's a big experiment piece. It has a passing resemblance to the original Invisible Man story, but it does retain a lot of themes. It does carry enough influence from the novel and the original film. It is an Invisible Man movie. It is, but it is still its own thing, and that's a good thing. Don't get me wrong. I can see because Lord Hellhound has told me once that this doesn't, kind of paraphrasing him. While he thinks this is a good movie, he thinks that it doesn't quite feel that much like an Invisible Man movie. It feels like an Invisible Man film in name only or something along those lines. I can see that, but I still will say, as a remake and a readaptation of The Invisible Man in contemporary times, this is a damn solid movie. And honestly, I couldn't have done it any other way. So, yeah, I like this movie story. It's pretty damn good. So, with all that being said, let us talk about the pros. Pro number one is Cecilia, played by Elizabeth Moss. Excuse me. She's great. She's a great protagonist. And I say protagonist because I don't call her a female protagonist. She's just a protagonist. But she's a great main character. She's very likable. She's very sympathetic. She is very well acted. She's very well written. And she's very, very believable. Believable as, well, as a lot of things. Believable as an architect, but mainly she's, well, also believable in the role. But she is very believable as a victim of domestic violence. This this ties into another pro that I have for this movie. And I feel like I probably should give a content warning for this video. I am going to be discussing the themes and subtext of this movie, which has to do with domestic violence. So if you're triggered by that, I'll try to like tread carefully talking about this, but just fair warning, if you're kind of sensitive to that stuff, this might not be a movie or review for you. That's okay. Sorry. Sorry. Um but yeah, Cecilia is very likable, very believable. She's very well written, and she's very sympathetic. You buy her as a victim of domestic violence. Her acting in this movie is fantastic. Um, when she is talking to her sister in James about the shit that she had to deal with being with Adrian, her body language and her facial expressions and her acting is very, very believable. I actually have somebody in my life who acts or acted very similar to Cecilia does in this movie. It has to do with my brother. I'm not going to get into details, but um, she acted very similar to Cecilia does in this movie. And then when I rewatched this movie recently, it just screamed. It just screamed, "Oh my god, this is real," because I've seen this shit in real life. And throughout the movie, you get very attached to Cecilia as a main character. You feel her frustration, her fear, her anxiety, her paranoia. And at the end, you get swept up with her moment of triumph. And it's because she's such a likable character that the character is so believable and so well done. She's not a woke bitch. She's not a feminazi. She's not mean. She's not bitchy. She's just a likable woman who went through a terrible, terrible thing, and you root for her in recovering from her terrible, terrible thing. And you get swept up in her wave of emotions and feelings throughout the movie. When she's mad, you're mad too. When she's distressed, you're also distressed. When she's sad, you also feel sad. And by the end of the movie, when she's happy, you're just like, you go, girl. Good for you. So yeah, she's a fantastic character. Couldn't have asked for a better protagonist. Pro number two is James, played by Aldous Hodge, a San Francisco police detective, Sydney's father, and Cecilia's childhood friend. Aldous Hodge, he played Alec Hardison in the TNT series Leverage, MC Ren in the 2015 biopic Straight Outta Compton, Levi Jackson in the 2016 film Hidden Figures, and Noah in the WGN America series Underground. So he's got some work under his disposal. And with James being a police officer, well, I know you're not sensitive, Andrew, but I'm sure that there are other people out there who will watch this who may be a little sensitive. But with him being a police officer, that's where I definitely feel the biggest influence of Leigh Whannell's history with Saw, because Saw deals with a lot of um, police characters, and hell, it becomes a police procedural drama by the end of the series. And this was even before I had seen all the Saw films. So as soon as I heard that Leigh Whannell had history with Saw, and I saw that James was a police officer, I just instantly thought, "Oh, yep, there's the Saw influence. See, Leigh Whannell is just never going to get away from Saw." Thankfully, though, aside from James being a police officer and this dealing with gaslighting and police procedural stuff, that's where the Saw similarities end. Not that it would be a bad thing per se, but still. Don't think this is the Invisible Man meets Saw. Even though that would be cool. Excuse me. But not a whole lot to say about James, but he is a very likable guy. Um, I love his relationship with Cecilia. It's not sexual, thank God. If they tried to push some kind of romantic connection between James and Cecilia, I think it would have been very unnecessary. Um, James acts very protective over Cecilia, like he's very loving and warm and supportive, in more like an older brother way, not like a wannabe love interest way. Um, he's like I say, he's very warm, he's very supportive, he's very loving. He's very jokey, and he has like a really good few moments of where he's just being a total goofball with both his daughter and Cecilia. One of his first lines is, "Cecilia, I don't mind you being here, taking your time getting over your stuff. You just took 2 feet outside, so as far as I'm concerned, you just walked to the moon." He's very playful and he's very low key and laid back, but he also does have some good words of wisdom. Even though that uh, Adrian was stalking her at this point, there's a scene in the movie when um, Cecilia sees like footprints stepping on Cecilia's blanket that she was trying to pull off the floor. She freaks out and calls James in, but James doesn't see him, of course. So he sits down with her and he like gets close and talks low to her. Look, you he will haunt you if you let him. The trick is to not let him haunt you. If you don't think about him, if you don't acknowledge him in any way, you'll be much better off. It's not the exact line, but that is of this of same similar lines. He's trying to tell her, look, you can't hyper focus on the bad stuff. You need to let the past be the past and you need to move on, which is something that is very applicable to people of domestic abuse. Now, I realize that's much more difficult than said than done, but that is something that I do believe in. It's something that I told the person in my life who went through this shit. I tell her that all the time. Um, so yeah. Yeah, I love James. He's a very likable guy. And when it comes to being a badass, he only has a couple moments to shine, but he more so just has this authoritative presence to him because he's a tall black guy, a tall, muscular black guy. He has that intimidating posture to him. Um, so he kind of, like I said, he demands his people's respect. So later in the movie, when James goes with Cecilia to talk to Tom, he's not rude about it, but he says to Tom, "Look, I need you to sit up and show some respect. We're here to try to figure some crap out, so we don't really have any time for sarcasm." He doesn't like yell it or snap at Tom in any way, but just the way that he says it and the way that he is like looking at him and the way that he's sitting in the chair, again, he just kind of commands your presence and he commands your respect. So James is a very likable guy. Also, one more thing too. Another thing I really like. This isn't an extra pro, but Sydney, I would also say, is another good element to this too. I love Cecilia and Sydney's relationship too. Cecilia acts like an older sister to Sydney. They sleep in the same bed. They do a lot of Cecilia gets Sydney up for school and gets her out the door and cooks breakfast and cleans the house for her, and their relationship is very again, it's very sisterly. It's like, girl power, girl talk, and all this kind of stuff, but it's not in like a woke way. It's just in a fun, loving, familial way. It's cute. And you also buy Cecilia and Sydney's chemistry. They just have a whole bunch of fun hanging out with each other and, roasting James and talking a little bit of shit, poking a little bit of fun. It's great. Pro number three is the Invisible Man itself, Adrian and Tom. Though I do think hmm, you can kind of it's a bit debatable. You can take the movie at face value and say that Tom was doing most of the invisible work throughout the film, but I think it's actually Adrian himself who was doing most of the shit uh, throughout the film, gaslighting Cecilia, fucking with her, and killing people too. I think a lot of it was Adrian, but Tom also helped too. But the idea of the Invisible Man in this movie is pretty damn good. I think it's a very good modernization. In the original Invisible Man, both movie and novel, the Invisible Man became invisible through some kind of chemical potion. It's still by a means of science, which is a common thing with universal monsters. A lot of them were brought about through science. But there's also some mystical stuff too. Here it's purely rooted in science. And a modern day thing, I think mixing chemicals and potions. Well, I think that's more akin for Frankenstein, but still at the same time, that did feel a bit archaic at this point. So I'm actually okay with um the Invisible Man just being a guy wearing a suit in this movie. It's like it's a bodysuit that has hundreds of cameras and electronic mirrors all over the suit, and it doesn't reflect light, but it's not really explained how the suit becomes invisible, but I think it's because of all the cameras, they provide a feed of everything that the suit sees in a 360-degree direction, and it reflects what the cameras see, so it's invisible at all times. It's a little hard to describe, but how the suit is done, it's easier if you just watch the suit in action, than somebody trying to explain it. But I love the Invisible Man in this movie. It's a great concept. It's a great modernization, and it still is effectively creepy, and effectively terrifying. Um, and of course, effective as a villain. So the Invisible Man is great. Pro number 4 is the production value. I think is really good. Again, with this movie costing only $7 million, I don't think it shows. This movie, well, it does, but it also doesn't. It doesn't look cheap, but because this is a small scale movie, you can just kind of guess, yeah, this probably didn't cost that much. But still, for only a $7 million movie, I think this movie is done pretty damn well. Leigh Whannell's direction, it's very strong, it's very professional, it's very well done, and very believable. All the sets look they're minimal, kind of like with Sinister. They're minimal, but they're still well done, and the movie is very well shot. Like the effects are good too, and the camera work is really good. Cinematography is really good. Overall, yeah, the production value is really, really, really good, and the direction is really good too. Good on you, Leigh Whannell. Let's give this guy a bit of a bigger budget, see what he can do. Like maybe have Leigh Whannell do a Wolfman movie or a Creature from the Black Lagoon movie. So these next two pros kind of have to do with each other. Pro number 5 is this is going to sound very weird. The great gaslighting elements. And pro number 6 is the domestic violence subtext. Again, content warning. Going to be talking about domestic violence. And it sounds strange when I say great gaslighting. It's like, what? So I don't support gaslighting. It's a terrible, terrible form of psychological torture on somebody. Do not support that at all. Still, as a story element for this film, it's very well done. I think this might be the best movie about gaslighting since Psycho 2. And how the gaslighting is executed in this movie is very, very, very believable and very convincing. Adrian does everything in his power to make Cecilia look incompetent, crazy, and nuts. And he fucks with her in so many ways. It's insane. It's very frustrating in a good way. So Meadow was telling me that the only con that she has with this movie is how nobody believes her throughout the movie, or at least most of it. But I told her, and she realized this too, that is the point. She's being gaslit. He tampers with her work. He drugs her and makes her look nuts and crazy. He kills people and makes her look like a murderer. He makes her look crazy. Um, It starts out slow. I'll talk about this when I get to the next couple pros. Um, he just does anything and everything possible physically, emotionally, financially, psychologically. He does everything in his power to make her life a living hell. And when it comes to the domestic violence subtext, so Cecilia states that, and this is very, very toxic and very poisonous. And this is a big reason why you feel a lot of sympathy for Cecilia. So when she sits down and talks to her sister and James, at first it started with controlling what I wore. And then when it escalated, when I left the house, what I said and what I thought, and if I did or thought or said anything that he didn't like, he would hit me, among other things. And I knew that because he wanted to have a baby. And I knew if I let that happen, I would never ever get away from him. Um, she doesn't, or well, we don't see any of this happen. But she does do a good job of painting a picture with just her words. So, well, I still don't I still don't think that this is done nearly as much nowadays. Like I used to say, movies aren't done like this. They just don't let an actor sit down and act and paint a picture with words. I guess that still is a thing. It's just not relied on nearly as much as it used to be, which is still a shame. But Elizabeth Moss does a really, really good job in painting a picture with words during that scene. And her actions and the way she talks about Adrian and how she acts around people and how she herself acts trying to move on from Adrian, it's very believable, and you get like a lot of secondhand information from her in painting a picture of what Adrian was like as a person. Damn. Seems like a piece of shit. Um so and it is unfortunate that there are a lot of people who throughout the world who suffer this kind of shit. Like this shit is real. All the stuff that Cecilia is talking about, this is very, very real, and that's what's so scary about this movie. It's not too over the top that a guy who is a technology and optics expert could actually put on an invisibility suit and gaslight somebody that he just wants to control and not love. This is not too over the top. There's a lot of stuff that this movie tackles that feels very real. And I think that's why this movie resonated with people so much. This shit is plausible. And it's not cool. All the stuff that Adrian does to Cecilia, it's fucked up. But in the context of the movie, I think it's very well done. It's very well written, and it's very believable in my opinion. So props to you, Mr. Winnell. And of course, a lot of it does have to come down to the actress. And Elizabeth Moss does a great job in portraying like the body language, the way people talk, like victims of domestic abuse. I'm sure just took one look at this performance and said, "Yep, spot on. All this shit that's happening, I've been through it." And I bought it too because, like I said, I've seen it. I helped somebody through it. Hell, I'm kind of still helping somebody through it. So, um, yeah, props to you. It's great. Pro number 7 is the suspense slash tension. This movie likes to take its time. So I think this probably is another example of a film that is slowly paced that I like. But I wouldn't even really say that this movie is slowly paced but I definitely do think it takes its time. It's a little bit like Jaws. It takes its time to lull the audience in, and it takes its time to get the audience hooked. There's a lot of long takes and a lot of long, quiet takes to get the audiences hooked. There's a lot, especially earlier in the film when Cecilia is, trying to move on, trying to adapt post Adrian, trying to, just get over what she went through. There's a lot of long takes that imply Adrian's presence, but we don't see him, of course. And then over the course of the movie, there's these like little things that he does that make his presence known to the audience, but not to Cecilia. The first one that I can think of, or not Adrian, Cecilia is making breakfast and she puts the skillet that she's frying some mushrooms and eggs in on simmer. She goes to wake up Sydney and it stays on the kitchen. And in the corner here is the frying pan. You see, because it's a gas burner, you see the flames grow, and quickly the food starts to sear and catch fire. And you instantly know, yeah, that was him. But Cecilia doesn't know that. So she comes in and gets a fire extinguisher, puts out the fire. She's like, what the hell? I left this on simmer. Then next is when Cecilia goes in for the job interview. Uh, well, that's part of the gaslighting, but her work is gone, and then you think, oh God, that's also Adrian. So she goes to bed, and Cecilia is waken up by Adrian taking photos of her sleeping. So she looks up. She mistakes a mannequin for Adrian, and then she like hears these noises. She's looking around her room, and she obviously doesn't see anything. Then she sees a chair, and it looks like something is sitting in it because there's an indentation in the seat. She throws her blanket over the chair. There's nothing. It just floats over the chair. Then she goes to grab it and try to, pull it towards her. Then it looks like there's 2 feet standing on it. So she tries to pull again. Then she sees another footstep come on the sheet further toward or closer to her. So then she freaks out. But then there's nothing when James comes in. And there's just all these definitely, so I'll talk about this too. All these little scenes throughout especially the first half that imply Adrian's presence rather than show him. And there's little things that's done to clue the audience into Adrian's presence, but not Cecilia's. And she is just wondering, what the hell is happening? What the hell is this noise? What's this shadow? What's this footprint? But the most suspenseful scene in the movie, hands down, is when Cecilia goes into the attic. She throws coffee grounds all over the floor. She tries to get Adrian to walk towards her and have a footprint appear in the coffee. That doesn't happen. She gets an idea though, and she tries to call Adrian's phone to see if he'll answer. And I've always been a big fan of this a little cliche in horror films. She calls Adrian's phone, then she hears a buzzing above her in the attic. I've always been a big fan of people realizing there's something above them in horror films. It's like a really, really good oh shit moment. One the best that comes to mind for me is that scene in Aliens when Ripley, Hicks, and the rest of the Marines are holed up inside the complex when the power's cut. aliens are still seemingly coming towards them on their scanners, but they don't see them. But then Ripley realizes the roof. And then Hicks grabs a flashlight, pushes up the grate on the roof, and there's aliens coming towards them. It's a really, really good oh shit freak out moment. Then Cecilia grabs a ladder, goes up in the attic, and finds Adrian's phone. And on that phone, there is a one word text surprise. This will lead me into pro number 8. Yeah, the jump scares. There's not that many. Cecilia getting smacked out of nowhere is another, or not Cecilia. Sydney getting smacked out of nowhere is a pretty good one. When either Adrian or Tom try to stop Cecilia from committing suicide in the psychiatric hospital, that's a good one. But the best jump scare of the whole movie, also, well, I'll talk about this later. That's a good jump scare too, but it's like a good freak out moment too. The best jump scare of the whole movie is when Cecilia catches Adrian. Um, she hears footsteps coming towards her from the attic, so she goes to the attic door and she dumps paint down the attic, and it pours and forms all over an invisible figure, and that's you're like, aha, got you. It's it's not so like scary as in it'll make you jump out of your seat, but it's a good freak out moment, and it's like a really good affirmation scene. Like, I knew it, you fucking stalker. It's like a really, really good scene, and it's a good triumphant, like, I knew it moment. And it's really, really good. Yeah, that's all I have to say. The jump scares are well done, but the main thing is the suspense and tension throughout this movie is very, very well done. It takes its time lulling you into a false sense of security, and it takes its time in luring you in and getting its hooks into you. It's great. Pro number 9 is the action scenes in this movie are decent. This movie's not mainly an action movie, but when there is some action, I think it's pretty well done. Um, there's a couple fight scenes, there's a couple shootouts. The main action scene is in the psychiatric hospital when the Invisible Man is taking down security guards left and right. Like he breaks wrists, snaps elbows, knocks a couple dudes out, shoots out someone's knee, and electrocutes another guy. Um, it's not bad. It's nothing over the top or big action packed or anything, but it's action packed enough to get the point across. It's entertaining. Pro number 10 is the special effects are really, really solid. Minimal, nothing super over the top, nothing super big, but this movie isn't super big. And what this movie achieves is perfect. It's perfectly fine. Um, Again, simple effects, all digital. There's not really any practical effects. Well, the bodysuit, the invisible bodysuit, is an actual suit. It doesn't actually turn invisible, but like the look of it is an actual suit. But all the invisibility effects are very well done. Like when Adrian's covered in paint or Tom is covered in fire extinguisher stuff. Um, it looks really good. Looks really solid. When Tom or Adrian are walking around when it's pouring ass rain out in the outside the psychiatric hospital, all the Invisible Man getting wet effects, as I call them, are convincing and believable. When people are picked up and thrown by the Invisible Man, it's very believable. It helps that, well, it was probably like a red suit, like what they were doing with the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. So that's all well done. All the actors work with CGI very well. When there's a floating gun or a floating knife, you can kind of tell that it's a digital effect, but it's simple and quick, so it's just fine. Most of the blood in this movie is CGI, though there's one scene. Oh, I was so happy. When Emily, Cecilia's sister, gets killed, I fucking hated this chick. I absolutely loathed this woman. She is a woke feminazi bitch, and she gets her throat slashed. And I was like, thank you, Jesus, because I hated this woman. She's so nasty and so hostile and vicious towards men, except James. She treats a waiter in this movie like total garbage. When her and Cecilia meet up in a restaurant, uh, the final time that Cecilia sees her sister, uh, she's acting like, "Yeah, we've been here before. We order food and you bring it to us." She's like totally dismissive towards this guy, and the guy's like, "Okay, can we start you with some drinks? Water, plain, please." And the guy's just like, okay, no problem." She's acting just like a total fucking ass. And I hated this woman. I was so happy when she died. I did not expect the movie to grant my wish like that. And that it was at that point in the movie where I was just like, yeah, I'm liking this movie. I was beforehand, but then I was like, at that point, I was like, okay, yep, I'm sold. Anything else this movie does, I'm game. But yeah, overall, well, when Cecilia, not Cecilia, totally. When Emily gets killed, her throat being slashed is CGI, but she like slumps forward on her chair and blood is just oozing all over the table and dripping on the floor. That's all real. But overall, yeah, the special effects are very solid. Minimal, but this is a minimal movie, so that's just fine. Pro number 11. Actually, I'll talk about this real quick. The shocking kills. There's not that many. There's mainly two actually, and the last one has to do with pro number 12. But Emily being killed is very shocking, like because you don't see it coming. How it's done, Cecilia and Emily are talking, and then the camera zooms in on Emily, and she gets like this confused, like, what the fuck look on her face. And then it cuts back to Cecilia. There's a knife floating next to Cecilia's head. So she looks over, the knife zips around and slashes her throat, and then the knife like appears and zips to Amelia or Cecilia's hand. And then Emily's grasping her throat, and Cecilia's sitting there shocked, holding a bloody knife. And then another patron next to her sees the knife and screams. So she gets up. She's like, "What the?" She's just shocked, and it's a really quick, shocking scene. So you're just like, "Whoa, what the fuck? I did not see that coming. That's ballsy." Um, there's not that many kills. Though when one security guard gets his knee blown out, that's a pretty shocking one. I think that guy did die. Um, and the shocking reveal of Tom being the Invisible Man is certainly well done because I didn't see it coming. I just thought it was Adrian. But pro number 12, the final pro, is the ballsy ending. Um, I did not see this coming. So the movie leads you to believe that it's Adrian doing all this. And then it's revealed that Tom was the one doing all the Invisible Man stuff for most of the movie. Even though I think it was a lot of it was still done by Adrian. When the film reveals that it's actually Tom who's the Invisible Man, then you're thinking, well, okay, maybe Tom was just jealous of his brother, so he staged his suicide so that he could take over Tom's money and then maybe try to get with Cecilia. But then it's heavily implied, but it never is fully stated that Adrian actually still is the one who was gaslighting Cecilia throughout the movie. Though again, I think the movie is definitely heavily implying that Adrian still is unhinged and delirious and still just wants to control every aspect of Cecilia's life. and he was the one who was gaslighting her a lot throughout the movie. So when he says surprise to Cecilia, I think that's the biggest clue because when Cecilia is first brought to the psychiatric ward, she's put to sleep, and then right as she drifts off, you hear the invisible man say, surprise. And it sounds just like Adrian. So when he says surprise, that's the biggest clue to the audience and Cecilia too, thinking, oh, yep, he's the one who was doing it. Yep, yep, yep. It's him. He's just crazy. So she leaves to go to the bathroom. There's a camera still on Adrian just sitting there eating food, holding a big steak knife. Then it looks like something is grabbing his hand, puts the knife to his throat, and forces him to slit his throat. But on camera, it just looks like he takes a knife and slits his own throat. Yes, I have a stick with me next to me because I need to beat somebody up. Who cares? Um, it's very ballsy, it's very shocking, it's very well done, and like I said, it's a good triumphant moment. As soon like when Cecilia's on camera, she's shocked and distraught and crying and sobbing, but once she gets off camera, her demeanor instantly changes, and then she's just like, "Gotcha." It's awesome. It's a really good ending that I did not see coming. I was like, "Yeah, that good for you. That was awesome." With 12 freaking pros talking about this movie, I think at least 4 more than I expected to have. Do I have any cons? Nope. I have 2 nitpicks though. One, I think the movie could have used a couple more kills, like have the Invisible Man go on a little more of a rampage, killing security guards at the psychiatric hospital. That's definitely the best action scene in the whole movie, but I still think it's a little short. But because that's not what this movie is trying to be, I kind of just let it slide. But because Leigh Whannell's previous film, Upgrade, had fantastic action scenes, if you were to take that stuff and apply a little bit more of it to this movie, it would have been great. But still. And nitpick number 2, I do think the movie is a little abrupt. Like right after Cecilia seemingly kills Adrian, she walks out carrying the invisible bodysuit, and then James just like looked a lot like he committed suicide. And then Cecilia walks off as a free woman. In that aspect, it's acceptable and it's okay because you're just like, okay, she's free. She's now able to do whatever the hell she wants. She's a brand new woman. But like, I want to learn. Like, does she keep the baby? Does she get rid of the suit? Is she going to continue adventures as the Invisible Woman, doing things to better her own life? Like, what is she going to do after this? Like, the movie just kind of ends right after Cecilia leaves. It's just a little abrupt and just a little bit not lame. I actually kind of want to say unsatisfying, but I don't know. It's a little hard to put into words, but I just think the ending could have been done just a little bit better, just a little bit. But yeah, all that being said about this movie, final thoughts. The Invisible Man is a great movie. It's a great remake. It's a great adaptation of The Invisible Man. It's a great psychological horror film. It's probably the best Universal monster movie since the 2010 Wolfman. I'm a big fan of that movie. Um, Actually, yeah, I actually think it is. Oh well, no, there's Tom Cruise mummy movies. Yeah, Best Universal monster movie since the 2010 Wolfman, hands down. This is a damn solid movie, a damn well-made movie. Leigh Whannell's best film. Here's to hoping he gets to make that sequel that he's been talking about since this came out. I want to see Elizabeth Moss come back as the Invisible Woman. That would be great. And my final rating for The Invisible Man, I'm gonna give it a very solid 9 out of 10. Very well made movie, very enjoyable, and I highly, highly recommend it. So go out and post your comments down below and let me know what you think. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and share this video with your friends. Uh, and as always, go out and check out this movie. It's really good. And I will see you guys in the next video.